Hello and welcome to another edition of Resources for Life TV at resourcesforlife.com. My name's Greg Johnson, and this is a companion video to an article that I'm writing right now. And the central question of the article is with regard to God's omnipresence and omnipotent powers. The general thinking along the lines of faith, at least in the West, is to consider people to fall into two categories. There are believers and non-believers. The three primary religions being historically, chronologically, Judaism, Christianity, and then Islam, I think reinforce this thinking that people either believe in God or they don't, and presumably those who believe in God will follow a religion that is a monotheistic religion. So those who are faced with the question of what life, what path, what belief system do they want to embrace, when they're faced with that, the question then comes to mind, do they have faith in God? If so, what religion best expresses what they believe or what they think seems to be true? And among those who are believers, there are people who are, very ardent followers and supporters of a particular religion or faith. And then there are people who really fall into the category of being believers, but who are, for lack of a better word, you might say, angry at God. And so these people are, would definitely acknowledge there's a God, but they would be so upset by something that went wrong in their life, or somebody done them wrong, or some catastrophe, or maybe just bewildered by, how can there be this all-powerful, loving God, and yet really serious tragedies and natural disasters in the world that are really outside of human control. So those are the two categories of believers. And this is really, I think, most eloquently presented in a movie called The Quarrel. If you can get your hands on a copy and watch it, I'd highly recommend it. It really presents this idea, I think, very clearly that, there can be two people who both, each of them, believe in God very deeply, but one is angry at God and the other one has even deepened their faith because they see miracles in what other people would say are catastrophes. So in the other category then of people who, let's say, are not believers, who don't believe in God, in that category you have a couple of choices. There's either the agnostic person who, they can't prove that God doesn't exist, they're just sort of undecided. And then the person who's an atheist, who essentially says, look, the catastrophes in this world and the sorrows in life and famine and illness and starvation, etc., that's proof that there can't be a God, because if there was a God, none of this stuff would be happening. Okay, so those are four categories. Believers, those that are actively seeking to follow religion, or those who are upset at God but believers, and then of the unbelievers, those who are kind of undecided, and others who are just saying this is impossible. Okay, that is, you could almost say, like those are the main branches of a tree, that is the tree of faith with regard to a world view of having just one God that's omnipotent. So what I think would be interesting to explore is the possibility of God not necessarily being all-powerful, which is actually, I think, has some founding, and that's what the article will explore in more depth, a God that is not necessarily all-powerful, because certainly within Christianity, if we want to use an example, Jesus is presented as being, some would say, the Messiah, some would say the Son of God. According to the Apostle Paul, Jesus is represented as being God. And Paul's letters and writings kind of reinforce that thinking. Well, if Jesus then is a representation of God, or is God, one would then wonder, why is it that if God's all-powerful, Jesus being God, was not able to perform miracles everywhere? He stated, if you believe in the New Testament and the Gospels, Jesus said, I couldn't really do miracles among people who just didn't have any faith. So faith was an essential component to these miracles taking place. And there's some other examples which I'll elaborate on in the article. But basically, the idea is that what if, as Paul's writings seem to suggest, what if Paul was right and Jesus, who, though very amazing and doing lots of miracles, was limited? And what if that's somehow suggestive of God being limited? Wouldn't that totally turn things around for the people that say, I'm angry at God because of, I lost this family member, or this horrible thing happened to me, or this catastrophe happened in the world? Those people could somehow be reconciled with the fact that, God is not a genie or somebody who's going to take care of all the problems in the world. God has limited powers and does the best possible to try to have a positive impact, but God's not going to just take care of everything. So that would take care of the second category of people who are just not quite able to pull it together to embrace some sort of faith in God and following religion, because they're just what seems to be rightfully so angry at God. The other category of people who say, oh, well, there just can't be a God because why are there all these catastrophes in the world? Well, there again, the atheist or even the agnostic who is having trouble with this idea of, wait a minute, how can a all-powerful and loving God allow all this to happen? If we really look to, in the case of Christianity, if we look to someone like Jesus and say, he's like the perfect representation of God, then shouldn't we, from that, accept and embrace the idea that, as much good as Jesus did, he didn't fix everything in the world, and as much as God would like to, God's not fixing everything in the world, not because of anyone's opinion, but just because of sort of mere observation. Anyway, I think that, these large categories of people who are having trouble accepting God and accepting a religion about God might be able to take another look at it. So anyway, that's what this video is about. It's kind of, like I say, a companion video, sort of an introduction to this article that I want to write on the topic, and I'd love to get some feedback from people who are interested in this as well. So let me know what you think. Thanks. Take care.